Hello, this is Susan Nash, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing about strategies for difficult times. And at any rate, I want to talk a little bit about new ideas of knowledge power in a post-COVID world. So exactly what does that mean? Basically, things have changed, and in a time of rampant questioning and notions of like control using knowledge, it's really important, I think, to kind of take a look at what some of the theorists have said and to kind of use them as a way to leverage what your experience tells you and your the knowledge base that you do have, your prior knowledge and your experience, and use it to identify patterns, to make strategic decisions, and also to predict to the best of our ability scenarios. And not to say that we're going to predict the future, we're predicting potential scenarios. So let's take a look at this first concept. So, if knowledge is power, the converse is also true. Knowledge can lead to powerlessness. The wrong kind of knowledge will strip you of power. You say, well, how do we know that the knowledge is wrong? Well, we know because society will tell us. We also know because experiential learning and scientific method will tell us. But we also know about how people have used narratives and stories to explain how knowledge power can lead to turning yourself into the Ubermensch with a will to power, powerfulness. But the converse is absolutely the case. If you endorse or embrace the wrong kind of knowledge, or if you are on the wrong knowledge path, you strip yourself of power, powerlessness. So, what is the main lesson here? The main lesson is that keep your knowledge moving. It's a and think of knowledge as a speeding bullet or a train that, okay, you're never going to really quite catch up to it, but be on the right train and on the bullet to a destination that's positive, not negative. So again, if you, for example, let's just think about this. You might say, okay, well, I really, really believe in William Reich and orgone energy, or I'm all about alchemy. Try trotting that out and getting grants or contracts or anything, and you'll suddenly realize your knowledge makes you powerless. Instead of empowering you, it it disempowers you, which is it was kind of terrifying. So, what we need to know about Friedrich Nietzsche is that in the Will to Power, where he puts together a model of the Superman, the Ubermensch, who manages to have infinite self actualization, infinite self overcoming, he creates himself. He does it because he is working with a knowledge base that allows him to do that. If you have exactly the opposite, then you have infinite disempowerment, infinite self de actualization. You will invisibilize yourself. Michel Foucault takes this a little bit further and talks about not only do you, if you threaten the power or knowledge base, not only do you run the risk of being invisible, you run the risk of being drawn and quartered. In the opening of Discipline and Punish, he discusses the punishment of a regicide, someone who who threatened the life of Louis XIV, I think, Louis the 14th. It might have been later, Louis the 16th. But at any rate, he describes the 4 horses that pull the ropes that are affixed to each of this regicide, this person's limbs. So right leg, right arm, left arm. And then to make things a little bit better and easier, they chop at the person's body. So then they crack a whip down on the flanks of those 4 horses, going each in its opposite direction, north, south, east, west. Now, and the most disgusting thing of all, besides the inhumanity of it all, is that an enormous crowd was there to watch. It's a little bit like watching a depiction of people going to watch a hanging in the Old West. I mean, a little bit like True Grit, like, oh, we're going to hanging. and so what is the beauty of a hanging for the hanging judge? Is it the death of the naughty person? No. It's in the fact that you can have a public hanging, and in the mind of every single person who attends it is the image of what will happen to you if you dare even think about doing certain crimes. And that is definitely the case in in Discipline and Punish, and it is definitely the case in True Grit, or wherever there's a public hanging. So the person who is drawn and quartered dies, but that scene of that horrific scene, sublime in the case, as Edmund Burke would say, in the case of horror, awe-inspiring, terrifically terrifying scene, that is the quintessential sublime moment that is engraved forever in each one of those witnesses' minds, in mind's eyes. So if they start saying, ew, I don't like Versailles, it's ugly. They don't even let themselves think that, because do they want to be drawn and quartered? No. So anybody mentions Versailles, oh, look how beautiful it is. It's so symmetrical. My neighbor's son died. Oh no, I'm not thinking. No, I'm not thinking that. it caused this great outbreak of malaria because of all the swampiness. Oh no, I'm not thinking about that. So anyway, so in the case of the geologist, powerlessness, we always talk about knowledge as power. Oh yeah, I'm going to know how to use AI and organize my files and put all of our legacy data in a repository, and we will organize it. Okay, well, there's some power in that, but that's not the real power. The real power is socially determined. So if you want the nouvelle impuissance, the new powerlessness, then just embrace the wrong paradigm, scientific paradigm, or embrace the wrong scientific ideology. When thinking again about Kuhn and the structure of scientific revolutions, he suggests about like the Copernican revolution that Copernicus was dramatically and amazingly courageous because he went up against the church in suggesting a new idea of our cosmology. So the cosmology, the organization of the cosmos, did not have the earth at the center. Instead, it had the sun as the center with earth orbiting. And that was deeply, deeply destabilizing in a world that embraced the great chain of being. The king is on top of the chain of being of humans, And in the chain of being for animals, the lion was on the top. I mean, there was just a hierarchy that was completely rigid. And in this hierarchy in the cosmos, the earth is on top. Why? Because this is where God's creation resides. So the geologist in 2020 who dares talk about, for example, instead of saying, oh, we believe in plate tectonics and this is our structure of Earth's history, we explain Earth's history through myogeosynclines, that geologist is essentially not listened to, erased, invisible. And same with geophysicists who have so-called black box solutions. So you have to follow the status quo, the dominant paradigm, the hegemonic forces, like it or not. And again, powerlessness is all in how you express fossil fuels. If you say we are recommitting ourselves to vertical wells and we are going to increase the drilling rate, well, okay, you might have some power and some people might endorse you. But if you say, we're renewing our commitment to fracking and we're going to drill more wells and we're going to flare all the gas because we don't have a gathering system yet, or we don't want to sell the gas. We just want to flare it because it costs more to produce it than to sell it. Or if you say, we're going to build a pipeline to gather the gas and transport it to an LNG facility, you just made yourself completely powerless in a world that is investing in a different paradigm. But that's political, and let's talk about scientific powerlessness. So how does a geologist regain power? So, I mean, let's say okay, I'm a geologist. I'm going to just talk about the science. Nothing about what is done with my science. So here's how a geologist regains power. Power of ideas, power of the map. The power of the map is in the vision, and the fact that with a map, you communicate a vision that transcends words, that goes into the eyes, is perceived by the eyes of the viewer as a representation, as color, shape, form. It's not just a symbol system of words, written words. So as it does that, it goes directly into the reptilian brain, into the limbic system. The eyes are triggering emotions. Then only after that do we have the cerebral cortex that makes sense of this stuff. So anyway, a geologist can regain power by having the raw materials to reshape the perception and reshape the map based on new knowledge and new ideas. So a geologist regains power by redrawing the maps. It's all about the maps. And how do you make the maps? You make the maps with data. This is why data becomes so important. If you're redrawing the maps, then that means that you are reprocessing data, or you are finding new data, or unique repositories of unstructured data. You are also finding if you're redrawing maps, you're redrawing scenarios. And so this means you have the power to identify patterns, you have the power to predict. And yes, there are some obvious ethical issues, but those ethical issues are something to discuss and be transparent with your audience. So the power of data. We talk about the data, unique repositories of unstructured data, long-tail data, unique repositories of physical, non-digital data, such as core samples and Also, potentially palynology of fossils, microfossils, nanofossils, also big behemoth fossils of Pasosaurus. I mean, imagine, well, it's easier if you have smaller bones, but the power of data is in anything that can be analyzed. Now, obviously, we want to change a lot of this into digital so we can use our algorithms, but it gives you the chance to identify and predict. So, what again, how does a geologist gain power through data? Is it by owning the data? That could be a part of it, but that's really not the geologist's way of adding, contributing value add. Is it through um, developing new algorithms? Well, that probably would be best done if you work in a team with data scientists and if you yourself have enough data science training that you know what you're doing, or at least know what you're talking about. But what the power of data is in the hands of a geologist is in the power to make maps and thus synthesize the data and incorporate a number of different scenarios at the same time, a number of different explanations, a number of different interpretive possibilities. So let's think about this too. Okay, what is the map? The map is a language. What am I doing? I'm speaking with language. Why on earth would there be any interest in this? And what makes language itself most compelling? And how would I create a map that has the most possible power? A map that generates the most possible power is one that allows itself to be explained with language in a way that creates a connection that engenders pure joy. And joy is the jouissance, is the joy of connection when language can bring people together, your minds together, and establish an intense, generative, and joyous act of creating something. And what is that something? That something is meaning. And keep in mind that every time you create a map or a diagram, you create a meaning making event and a meaning that connects with people for a little explosion of joy, jouissance. Now, what is the difference between jouissance and the abject? Julie Kristeva talks about in The Powers of Horror, the abject is the human reaction, horror, vomit, to a threatened breakdown in meaning caused by the loss of distinction between the subject and the object, or between self and other. So, a primary example of what causes such a horrific reaction or the power of horror is, what do you do when you see a corpse? It's an aversion, extreme aversion, and why? It's abject. It traumatically reminds us of our own materiality. So, an encounter with a corpse, the encounter with Halloween, haha, with the candy, no, but it traumatically reminds us of our own materiality. And one could argue that in times of COVID, every time we see death counts, we are reminded of our own materiality. After a while, the abject becomes ennui, and we're just kind of stultified. I won't say bored, but stultified by the constant pound, 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 pound monotony of the numbers. And that is not at all where you want to be. Where you want to be with yourself as a scientist, or yourself as a geologist, or yourself as an innovator, is in that production of a map or a narrative that causes jouissance, that connection, vital, happy connection that reminds people of generative life, of happiness, of potential. And the worst thing you can do is to create something that evokes the abject, the horrific, the corpse, the gross thing. So let's think about this. Merchants of Light. In Sir Francis Bacon in the New Atlantis described people in an ideal society. And there were different roles. My favorite of all of those roles were those of the merchants of light. And they were the people who traveled from place to place, bringing knowledge to new locations, new people. They were the merchants of light, light being knowledge. And there are so many implications with respect to science and technology. I just am amazed, really. And The New Atlantis is a utopian novel, worth reading, rereading. It's a little bit repetitive, but in like most of it, like Sir Thomas More's Utopia, which actually means no place, food, no place, no, and topos, place, no place. It doesn't really exist except in our minds. But Utopia in Sir Thomas More broke it down into a wonderful kind of existence where everybody had a role, everybody had a satisfying job, everybody had a satisfying niche in society. And also, if we think about Maslow's hierarchy of demands, in Sir Thomas More's Utopia, everybody was already elevated to basically stage 3 at minimum, where you're seeking association or affiliation. And you can get to 3 because levels 1 and 2 are satisfied. You've got your food, you've got your security, you feel safe, you feel fed, you feel healthy. So here's some emergent ideas that to think about when we consider our strategic planning. First of all, is Aristotle, the concept of justice. He talked a lot, in Aquinas later, but a just price incorporates the amount of work that people put into something. In other words, just price acknowledges that you contribute part of your life to something, and it basically affirms that you as a worker are contributing the moments you have on this planet, and that needs to be compensated. And it's not necessarily just how valuable you are, how skillful you are. It really has to do with your contribution, your your sacrifice of your vital essence, really. Okay, so Carol Dweck in Mindsets talks about the psychology of success, and she focuses on developing a growth mindset. I put Carol Dweck in here, sandwiched between Aristotle and Francis Bacon. Do I think that she's part of that continuum? Well, no, except that she is, and even takes it further in the sense that none of these work at all without a mindset that focuses on personal, professional, community health. And when she says growth, I mean, really, she's meaning health. Um, it's not just about more, 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 more. It's about the integrative growth that's intellectual, spiritual, material all together. And to have a mindset, it reminds me so much of Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics, because again, it's a recognition of the individual's life. It isn't just about how many widgets they produce. It's not about the output, it's about the contribution. And again, the New Atlantis, being merchants of light, how do you help people do that? They can't just wake up one morning and have that. You need to have teachers and guides. And we forget, we have lots of workshops. We have so many different things we can go to online and all these different MOOCs. and and that's all good. However, do we really take a moment to say, what is this actually doing for us? And do we put all this knowledge into a structure? Charles Fourier was the utopian who talked about creating self-sufficient communities. I love Fourier because he talked about the butterfly effect. And it's not the butterfly effect that, oh, when something happens here, in Brazil or in New York, and then in Brazil, a butterfly flaps his or her wings, its wings. No, Fourier talks about, okay, our interests should connect to what we do for work. We should be like butterflies. We go from one flower to flower. Hello? Yes? Oh, hi. I'm so glad to talk to you. How are things going? Great. Oh, wonderful. Wow, good for you. I know it's like it's been such a weird turn. And and I wasn't sure how everybody was supposed to connect, but thank you so much for doing this. Great. So how's the weather up there? Nice. Yeah, we had ice. We have people who have still don't have power since Monday. Yeah, it's like well, here I lost power for a day. It crashed down all the trees because it ice on the leaves, and so it was so heavy they just crashed in the power lines. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we found out. Yeah, that's great though. I'm so glad. So did you put them into Canvas? Okay, so you can always email me too. Great. Okay, perfect. So let's consider how Friedrich Nietzsche talks about values being socially mediated, affected by power structures. And then again, Michel Foucault, power, knowledge, and social control via institutions. So, where can we see some intellectual krypton? Krypton, kryptonite, or krypton, I guess, has an impact on Superman. But let's think about the thing that makes us really powerful. Cognitive, or what takes away our power. Cognitive bias, the reptilian brain, thinking fast, will always nullify or interfere with the rational frontal cortex that thinks slow. Amos Tversky worked with him, and they talked about how to overcome cognitive bias. Herman Melville, okay, I'm talking about Moby Dick, and also in his other novels, one of his themes was thinking against the grain, kindness toward the disenfranchised. Jacques Lacan, psychologist, French psychologist, the mirror stage, how we know ourselves by thinking of ourselves as others perceive us. Looking at ourselves in a mirror, thinking, okay, the way I see myself in that mirror is the way the world sees me, and thus I need to manage myself so I can manage what appears in the mirror. Stacy Kerman in In-N-Out Burger, with her book that provides a behind-the-counter look at the fast food chain that breaks all rules, talks a lot about going against profit and going for the person. So people over numbers. Amy Webb, who is a quantitative futurist, works New York University, talks about recognizing how naming your strategy, for example, Plan 2030, gives you a sense of control over an uncertain future. So rethink your linear timelines of planning, and don't be so linear. Think about a multiplicity of branching scenarios, causal effects, and also find out just what it costs you to say, oh, that's not very likely to happen. I'm not going to really actually plan for it. I'll think about it, but I won't plan for it. And then it happens. That's what happens to you when you actually say that's high impact, low probability heat map event that's really, really, really high impact, but not likely to happen. At least there's a low probability. Asteroid impact, Siberian volcanic shield going for 100,000 years, Yosemite super caldera, actually it's erupting now. But if you do not at least go through that experience of planning and have a response at least mapped out, maybe an inadequate response, but at least you've responded to it, means that you will be financially and psychologically completely unprepared. And finally, Didier Swannet, 2009, talks about the Dragon King. Now, what is a Dragon King? Are we having to go live in a world of Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy and and the kind of annoying video games that make you ride around in a pink unicorn? No. What the Dragon King event is, a predictable extreme event that's often confused with a black swan event, unpredicted, unforeseen, with massive impact. And anyway, we talk about tipping points and bifurcations that magnify the Dragon King effect. COVID-19 is arguably a Dragon King event and not Black Swan. So I want to thank you, and please connect with me on LinkedIn, and we will continue this conversation. Thank you.